introduce Steve Huffman. Steve Huffman is a co-founder of Reddit.com, a social news site and one of the largest communities online. He created Reddit with his college roommate, Alexis Ohanian. Reddit was initially funded by Y Combinator in 2005 and has grown to over 3 billion page views per month. In October 2006, Reddit was acquired by Condé Nast Publications. In 2010, Huffman co-founded Hipmunk, a travel search site that aims to take the agony out of finding plane tickets and hotels online. Hipmunk has been named to Time Magazine's top 50 websites and top 10 smartphone apps. Huffman was named to Inc. Magazine's 30 Under 30 in 2011 and Forbes 30 Under 30 in 2012. Huffman is a 2005 graduate of the University of Virginia.
And I have the pleasure to introduce Tikan Bernstam. Tikan is the co-founder of Scribd and Parse. Scribd is the world's largest document sharing site and is a top 100 most visited site on the internet. Through several rounds of venture capital funding, Bernstam helped raise more than $25 million for Scribd. And Parse makes it much faster and easier to create native mobile applications. And Parse is the cloud application platform powering tens of thousands of apps. Bernstam raised more than $7 million in funding for Parse, and Parse has over 20 employees and is growing rapidly. Bernstam is currently an entrepreneur in residence at Google Ventures, and he is graduated from Dartmouth College. And I'm going to hand it off now to Kathleen.
Thank you, Patrick. Okay. Okay, so I want to begin on a more serious note. Steve, what is your favorite Reddit post?
My favorite Reddit post, like of all time?
Like most memorable.
I can tell you most memorable. There was a time on Reddit before we had a length limit to titles. And so people would post these like long like political rants and titles and that sort of thing. And I remember once I was on this conference call talking about something rather serious. I don't remember the specifics. And somebody had posted a Unicode picture that took up the entire page of Fry from Futurama. And at the time, like, I had never seen anything like that. And so I'm sitting here on this call, like, trying to make some point, and I was just like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. And like, I was actually kind of speechless. And so I had to basically, I was like, guys, I gotta go. I got this stupid thing to deal with. Because then for the next like 5 hours before we actually like dealt with this issue, that's all Reddit was just like stupid Unicode pictures, like the whole site. So that was pretty memorable.
Well, nice. Okay, so tell us, how did you come up with the idea for Reddit?
Well, I mean, like most startups, like we didn't have like the idea for what Reddit is today, 7 years ago. We originally, Alexis and I, applied to Y Combinator with a completely different idea that had to do with ordering food from your cell phones. And we were rejected from Y Combinator with that idea. But the YC partners liked us. And so when we were on our way back, we were in college at the time, when we were on our way back to Virginia, they called us and basically said, we really like you guys, we just don't want to fund that cell phone idea. So if you want to figure something else to work on, we can do that. So we got off the train, got another train going north, back to Boston. That's where YC was at the time. And we basically got this brainstorming meeting, me, Alexis, and Paul, where we decided we were going to build the combination of my favorite website, which was Slashdot, and Paul's favorite website, Delicious, and we were going to build the front page of the internet. And I still have like my notebook from that meeting where I left thinking, we're going to build the front page of the internet. And I remember going home thinking like, okay, whatever. Like, I didn't actually believe that, right? I just wanted to work, on this thing as part of Y Combinator because Paul was like my idol at the time. And then from then on, that's just kind of what we were trying to build, and it worked out okay.
Awesome. And Tikan, what about you? How did you come up with the idea for Scribd?
Yeah, so we tried lots of ideas before Scribd, right? They say 9 out of 10 startups failed. Well, we were like unusually dumb because that was like number 20. And we had tried a ton of different stuff. Again, like Steve, we applied to Y Combinator with very different ideas that were all terrible. And it's that process of iteration and just doing and trying and getting feedback and everyone telling us it sucked. And after the 19th time, you start you kind of get used to it. And even Scribd, people hated that. Like Justin hated that company.
I still hate that company.
And the original idea, well, the official story for the press is that Tripp's dad, which is true, was he runs neurosurgery at Stanford, and he was trying to put one of his articles online and just had no easy way to do so. The real story is that YouTube was super hot back then, and we're like, well, let's do YouTube for X, and let's fill in X. And like, well, Flickr's already done photos, so like, what other media formats are left? And we're like, documents. So that's actually a more accurate portrayal of what happened.
Nice. So you said you had about 9 ideas before you came onto this one.
19, I'd say.
19. So can you talk a little bit about the myth of the great idea? Like, do they need a great idea to create an awesome company?
Yeah. So this topic is, to me, really interesting because I meet a lot of smart people who say, like, I'd love to do a startup, I just don't have that genius idea. Like, I need that, that brilliant idea. But if you look at the great companies, like look at Dropbox. Like, that was a huge crowded market that was already growing. There were lots of people doing file storage in the cloud. In fact, people turned Drew down for investment because they said there's too many players. But usually a really fragmented space like that with lots of companies means that all the products suck, which was true in that space. And so Drew just came in and did one of the 3 things you have to do. You either make a product that's 10x better, 10x cheaper, or that targets a particular niche, like maybe just enterprise or just moms or something. And so Drew did that, and now Dropbox is enormous. You can actually say the same thing about Weebly. People were doing like hosting, as a service before Weebly. Weebly just knocked it out of the park. So same thing with Hipmunk. There were other travel search sites like Kayak and Expedia, but Hipmunk has the best one.
And I would actually add on to that real quick. It's success is less about the idea and much more about like the founders and execution, because good ideas fail at the hands of bad leadership, and bad ideas succeed, much further than they would have normally because they have founders who are just like relentlessly pushing that thing on the market. Mm-hmm. And so it's much less about the idea and much more about the work that goes into it.
Yeah, I'm stealing this line from Drew Houston, but all that matters is 1, a huge growing market, and 2, founder market fit, where the founder is determined and understands the market.
Mm-hmm. And Tikan mentioned Hipmunk, which besides Reddit, Steve has done Hipmunk. So can you tell everyone a little bit about how you got the idea for that?
Yeah, sure. So I left Reddit in 2009, and I basically took some time off. And I was starting to get a little stir crazy, and my friend Adam, we had been friends for about 5 years. He was just graduating from MIT, spring of 2010. He called me and said, "Hey, what are you doing this summer?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do another startup." He was like, "Do you know what you're going to do yet?" I was like, "No, something." He's like, "Well, I want to do this travel search thing." And I was like, "No." I was like, that is stupid. And I understood immediately what he was getting at, right? Because I'd been traveling a lot, and anybody who travels knows that like buying travel is a total pain in the ass. You have to deal with these companies and airlines that just fundamentally don't like their customers. But I told Adam, I was like, we can do anything we want. Like, I'm pretty plugged in. I've got a great network. We can raise money. We'll get press. Like, we can do anything we want. We have all these unfair advantages. Why would we choose the most hostile space possible? And he's like, well, it's a big market. And I was like, okay, lots of big markets. But I mean, Adam, like that's his thing, right? And to be fair, he's North American debate champion. He just kept working on me and working on me and working on me. And fundamentally, I don't like to make decisions. So I just finally acquiesced under the notion that, and I told him this. I was like, I'll do this with you because I think we can do better. I just think it's going to be a really rough road. When we fail in 3 months, we'll do what I want to work on. And he was like, okay, deal. And so that's how I went into Hipmunk, is really kicking and screaming.
So what can you tell to all these students? How should they know when they should pursue a business? When to take it from being an idea and actually working on it and gathering a team?
It's like you hear adults talk about this all the time. Like there's never a right time to have kids. Like you never know when you're ready. You just have to do it. Because you'll never be ready. Like the lessons that it takes to start a startup, you cannot learn anywhere else other than starting a startup. You can get an MBA, that'll maybe help here and there for some things. You can go work for another startup, that'll actually help a lot. But if you want to be a founder someday, you should be a founder now. because you just need to get started.
Yeah, I would add on that your opportunity cost now is about as low as it's ever going to be. When you're married with kids and like a mortgage, that's when it's damn risky to go to a startup, right? That's when like having like $20,000 in credit card debt really hurts, and your spouse is looking at you saying, "What the hell are you doing? Like, go get a real job." But now it's just my parents who are doing it, right? So.
Yeah, and I remember like when I was in your guys' position, the rationale I was using to me and to my parents, who were kind of against the whole startup thing, I was like, "Mom, I've been living in poverty for the last 4 years. Like, what's another year? What's the big deal? Like, worst case scenario, my life is actually nearly identical."
And finally, even if you start on something and you fail after 1 to 2 years, people are like, that job at Microsoft or Google or wherever else will still be there for you. Those companies love seeing people who have tried companies, and you learn so much more in those 1 to 2 years than you'd ever learn at some giant corporation.
Mm-hmm. And Tikan, since you've spent time at a VC firm and at a startup, can you talk about the differences there?
Yeah, so I just joined Google Ventures as an EIR, and so it's been really interesting.
Can you explain what an EIR is?
Yeah, sorry. So an EIR is an entrepreneur in residence. It means I get paid to work on my next startup inside of the venture firm. But I also help them I also give my input into decisions about who they should fund, who they shouldn't fund, whether I like certain ideas, especially anything mobile. They'll come to me because of Parse. And it's actually a really great job. It's probably not when you get straight out of college, but it basically, after 6 months, I start a company, and they kind of will likely try to go in and fund it afterwards. Because this will be my third startup, I suppose.
Awesome. So can we talk a little bit about what your biggest accomplishments are? Because you guys have both done so much. So is it like being named Forbes 30 under 30?
No. No.
Getting on the front page, like.
Yeah, I've been on the front page before. It's pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
I mean, my biggest accomplishment is probably Reddit so far. It's like the defining thing in my life. It's been kind of a fun ride. We didn't really know what we were building, so it's hard to say like, I made this thing. Look how awesome I am, right? Because we were, along for the ride. We just basically had a lot of inside information. And so, yeah, I'm super proud of it. But it's, the Inc. thing and the Forbes things, those are basically, that's networking, right? Especially like you make friends with reporters, and like that's all that is. And it's really fun, and it helps, but it's not like, I worked really hard. Like I didn't as a kid think, oh God, I hope I can be in Forbes one day. Like, that would be great. I guess Bruno Mars did or something. Yeah. Whatever. It's stupid. That's a stupid motivation.
So the answer I should give is Scribd or Parse, but if you check my Facebook profile pics, it's actually beating Dave Rusenko from Weebly in a sprint triathlon by about 3 seconds. And I always rub it in his face, and I'm always constantly putting those photos back up just to irk him on Facebook. So much so that Kyle Vogt from Justin TV is like, again, like, just stop.
Nice. So when you have all these companies like Cadillac and the Green Bay Packers using Parse, is that exciting for you, or is it just another company using your service? Yeah,
so I should say we treat and value all our customers equally. But hell no, that was amazing. When you see like the first time like a company like the Green Bay Packers like get on and paying you money, A, I like the Packers, which is awesome. And B, like they're like big enterprise customers who pay lots of money. So that's awesome, and a huge validation of our thesis for Parse that we can really tackle enterprise mobile apps. So for us, it's a really big deal. And yeah, we're really excited about those kinds of companies.
So when did you realize that Parse was going to work out for you? So you're approaching it as an idea. When did you decide to plunge into it?
Yeah, so I mean, again, with Parse, this time around, we built a dozen landing pages for other ideas before Parse. Parse was like one of 12, and that was the one that really got the most traction. So landing pages are a good way to test your idea without spending 2 years working on something without feedback. So we made a ton of landing pages, and we would collect email addresses, and then put up surveys afterwards, and then see do people actually want this? Are they willing to pay for it? And you can learn so much that way and save yourself so much time. Highly recommend it. There's lots of services like Unbounce that can also help you with this.
Actually, I thought I want to highlight your answer a little bit more, because I thought that was like a really ruthless, like, veteran entrepreneur move, which was like, because I remember Tikon, like, after he left Scribd and was trying to think of his next thing, was just like agonizing over this thing for like a year. That's all he would talk about, is what's his next thing going to be. And we're just like, Jesus Christ, man, just get to work. But you guys were really ruthless about finding like the right market, the right time, like what's hot right now, like what can we do to build the most value in the shortest amount of time, and then like executed on it. Yep. And I feel like that's something like, that's a different mindset from like first-time entrepreneur, where you probably build something that like solves your own problem. You have this like emotional attachment to it. You're not thinking about a business, to I am just going to make the most like valuable thing I possibly can, no matter what. And it worked.
And so with you, when did you realize that Reddit was going to be huge?
I mean, it's hard to say, because my definition of huge keeps changing. And you asked me a year ago, I'd be like, well, Reddit's huge now, but Reddit, like I think that the little bio said 3 billion page views, and now it's like 5 billion page views. So I keep like having to readjust. So I don't know. I can tell you this moment when I remembered it was going to work. When I stopped thinking about it as like this like adventure working for Paul Graham, and started thinking about it as like this real thing, was in, I think, August of 2005. No, it must have been later. We were in a different apartment. Maybe it was like November of 2005, when I went a whole day. We used to fake all of our content on Reddit. Alexis and I had 100 usernames between us, and we'd submit all of the content ourselves to make it look like Reddit was an actual community, when it was really just me and Alexis kind of goofing around. And I remember the first day where I didn't submit any fake content. I woke up in the morning and the front page was full. Like, the front page used to dry up. We had so few submissions, the front page would actually be empty. That's how bad it was. So I'd wake up in the morning and furiously submit stuff. And the first day where I didn't submit anything, I didn't use also my votes counted like a lot more. And I didn't use my super voting privileges either, and the site just kind of worked. I remember that was like, oh my gosh, this is neat. This is like a real thing. People are using this. I don't know these people. And that was a pretty special moment.
How did people first start finding out about it?
So Paul, because we got into YC in kind of this unorthodox way, was kind of took our project a little personally, and he'd be in my inbox every morning about like, what are you doing? Why haven't you launched yet? And I remember I got this email from him. We started working June 1st. I got this email from him June 22nd, and it was like, why haven't you guys launched? It's either because you are incapable of doing it, or because you're waiting until it's perfect. And I don't know which is worse. And I was just like, Jesus, like, I was a little hot about that. So I wrapped up everything I needed to do to have like this basic site online. Keep in mind, I had like never built a website before. This was like my first thing. So I emailed him, I think later that afternoon. I was like, okay, Paul, here it is. You can see it. It's running on my laptop over like an AOL dial-up connection. And then he posted it to his blog. And we started getting traffic immediately. And all of a sudden, like, we were launched, and we had to scurry to like find stuff. So I wasn't ready to launch. Paul just kind of launched us. And he did us a pretty big favor, I think.
And could you talk a little bit about the community on Reddit? Because that just blows my mind, that people care about karma, and it has no translation into real life. Like, to think that you're assigning points to something and that people actually care about it. Like, when did you realize that that would really matter?
Well, it's funny, because I have this notebook of ideas that I wrote when I was on the plane to Boston. When I graduated school, moved to Boston to start YC, and I started just kind of writing out, like, what's the first version of Reddit going to do? And karma was like actually one of the first ideas. And this was before kind of gamification was like a thing. And I just thought it would be nice for people to have like an indicator of how valuable they were to the site. Mm-hmm. And so it's not worthless, right? It's a measuring contest of how valuable you are on the site. And it's just always kind of worked. We've used it for different purposes. Reddit internally actually uses it for all sorts of things, because people with low karma, like, your votes don't count very often, your submissions don't go through very often, and the site will seem slow for you, and you'll get a lot more error messages than the other guys, because you're probably a spammer. And then once you break out of that, so we use karma for all sorts of things. The users don't know, and they don't really care, but yeah, it is what it is.
Awesome. So we're just going to do a few more questions because I imagine there are going to be a lot of questions from the audience for you. So Tikan, can you talk a little bit about lifestyle versus venture-backed startups? So how people know which route is best for them?
Yeah, it's just one distinction that I haven't heard here so far, and it's worth mentioning. Because most of the folks here have started these kind of companies that are either going public or have raised a ton of money. There's other routes to go, right? Like I have friends who make high six figures and have never raised money, and just sort of by building products like, say, appointmentreminder.com, solving problems for small to medium-sized businesses. It might not be as glamorous as a site like Reddit, but you can do really, really well that way. And being your own boss and not having to answer to investors can be really rewarding. And so it's just another option that people don't talk enough about. If you're interested in that topic, you should basically listen to everything that the 37 Signals guys have said, and Patrick McKenzie, folks like that. But there's a lot of people quietly doing that and who are very happy that way. The whole traditional startup route, like the Dropbox route, is definitely an alternative. But the odds of success, the odds of you here starting the next Instagram, tiny. But the odds of you starting a company that maybe could get 2,000 people paying $40 a month, which is $1 million a year, that's not that shabby. And a lot of you might be happy with 1/5 of that. So that's the number of markets that you can hit to get 400 customers paying you for $40 a month. There's so many of them. There's so many problems out there that small businesses have. So yeah, instead of targeting the Fortune 500, everyone else kind of below that. But always businesses, don't charge consumers, because at Scribd we've tried both, and people will shell out their corporate cards really fast. But when it's my credit card or my personal card, that's when people are flaky. They cancel after 2 months and they send 20 annoying support requests. Whereas the business cards they'll just let it roll for years. So.
Well, nice. So we're going to have one more question before we open it up. Can you give both of you, can you give one piece of advice to everybody to take advantage of college while they're here? So learning new skills and other things. What would you do if you were back in college?
If I was back in college, I would play Halo with my roommates for as much time as I possibly could. And I say that in perfect seriousness. You always hear this is the best time of your life. This is the best time of your life. You will make friendships here that will last the rest of your life. And you will have opportunities to make money your entire life. And, Sybil was kind of touching on this before, right? The other cliche is money doesn't buy happiness. Friendships make happiness. And so I would take advantage of that. This opportunity you have to be surrounded by like-minded peers, by thousands and thousands of people who are your same age and like to have fun and like to go out and like to do whatever it is you like to do. Because this is, as an adult, you'll find these sorts of experiences are harder and harder to come by.
Yeah, if you look at the top 5 regrets of the dying, no one said, God, I wish I'd worked harder or made more money. It's always I wish I had not lost touch with my college friends, stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely agree with Steve about that. But in school, when you're not having fun, you can also either get technical or find technical co-founders if you want to do a startup. That can't hurt. Or play Halo with people who are technical.
Yeah,
how about
exactly.
that qualification?
I don't know how many people I've met, hundreds, maybe 1,000 at this point, business guys who are where do I find a technical co-founder? And it's you're too late, bro. You went to college with 1,000 of them. That is where you find them. So if you want to start a startup and you're not an engineer and you think you're going to need an engineer, you better be making friends with engineers.
And you better be coming to the hackathon.
One quick shout out for actually Steve's an advisor at Dev Bootcamp. Anyone can really learn how to build websites. It's really not that hard. In 9 weeks, Dev Bootcamp for $12,000. We'll teach you how to do it. And I have friends who've done this and they come out and they are proficient programmers who can build stuff. Steve's an advisor, and so you should talk to him if you're interested. But picking up programming it's not some you're not going to build hardcore stuff at Google after this course, but you can certainly build SaaS websites, subscription service websites.
Well, awesome. Okay, let's open it up to questions.
Tikon and Steve. Yeah, Steve and Tikon. So I'll answer real fast first. The
we'll
question,
repeat yeah.
So the question was, suppose you actually want to find those 400 paying customers for like $40 a month to make 200 grand a year. How would you do that? And yeah, so there's all kinds of businesses in different segments with different problems. Going with the trends or fads, as you mentioned, is actually what a lot of companies do when they want to go the Dropbox route. They say, oh, like, I remember that year real-time was really hot, and everyone was doing real-time like search and real-time this and that. So, like, people who are targeting enormous growing markets, like the way Dropbox did, like that's a great way to build a huge company that's going to IPO. But the number of small businesses with like problems that like are just not being addressed, people who have to use like MS Access tools to help them with that kind of stuff, like there's so many people like that. Like so many like larger companies are still stuck using that stuff. The best way to do it is honestly talking to people. Like you talk to like hair salons and like an owner of a hair salon and find out that people who miss appointments are a big freaking deal. It costs them a lot of money. And it turns out if you shoot them a text before the appointment and they don't they're much more likely to show up. It's like 3 or 4x more likely or it's a 75% reduction in like the cancellation rate because people feel guilty. So it's just simple things, but like it's just talking to people about the problems they actually have at their jobs.
Yeah, I mean, literally every small business, like it frustrates me sometimes when I see people how they like misuse technology or don't use it at all. Like those are business opportunities.
Yeah. Or just talk to me like at Parse. All the software we use, I hate. Like there's not one good piece of software that I think, or there's not one piece of software which is good enough that like people don't bitch about constantly.
Yeah, everything. Like you can build anything and sell it if you do a good job. And so to answer your question, the other question about like what are my credentials, I studied computer science in school. I've been programming basically my entire life, and so that was obviously like specifically helpful for like building websites. But I think the other quality that's really helpful that kind of all of us share together is just a general sense of pride in the work that we do, wanting to do a good job, caring about product, empathizing with the user. I've seen a lot of people or employees who don't have those qualities, and I think it's really difficult to succeed as a founder without those things. But like I didn't really know that in hindsight, and I never thought like, oh, I'm going to be a great founder someday. I just thought, I'm going to be a programmer someday.
Sure.
What's the best way do you guys think to do like your market research to find out if people would actually want to use like your app or your product?
I mean, the very first thing that I do now.
So the question was about how you do market research.
Yeah. So how do you do market research to see if people want what you're building? Which is a great question, right? You want to find that out as soon as possible, right? So I really like starting off with landing pages, and I threw up 12 different landing pages on Hacker News that asked for your email, and after you entered that, then it took you into a Google Docs survey, and I figured out who you were, like where are you from IBM, are you from like a small company, are you willing to pay, are you actually willing to pay, and some people even go, I didn't do this, but some people even go so far as to have a fake credit card form, which doesn't actually work. It says, sorry, this will be coming soon, just to measure if people will actually pay and sign up. So there's things you can do like that, but just talking to customers, and then past that you can build what's called an MVP, minimum viable product, or just like some sort of basic demo for the potential customer, and seeing and getting feedback as early as possible, as often as possible.
Yeah, and the alternative approach, which is my approach, which is far less disciplined, is I try to make things that I want to use. Because I feel like I'm really picky. And so if I use it and am happy, there are other people like me who will use it and be happy. And Hipmunk, we've been getting better about being more disciplined about especially as we start building products that I wouldn't actually use, testing it out with users and getting feedback that way. But, we're not very good at it. So I